Hello, my name is Phil Valentine, and thank you for allowing me to audition for you. Since I don't know exactly how dramatic you want me to be, I'll try to be a little melodramatic. I can always tone it down. And I look forward to hearing your comments. I'm going to be reading off the screen, so I may step forward from time to time to scroll down a little bit. Okay, thank you. Here we go. Welcome to one of the most haunted buildings on the eastern seaboard, the Peyton Randolph House. Over 2 dozen people have died in or around the Peyton Randolph House since it was built in 1715, and many of them remain to haunt the home. The Randolph House was once featured by USA Today as one of the most haunted houses in the United States. It was built in 1715 and purchased by Sir John Randolph, the only Colonel Virginian to receive knighthood in 1721. He later purchased the eastern lot in 1724. After his death, the home was willed to one of his sons, Peyton Randolph. Peyton is one of our founding fathers and served as president of the First and Second Continental Congresses and cousin of Thomas Jefferson. Now, the house's troubles seem to start with the outbreak of the Revolutionary War. The governor of Williamsburg at the time, Lord Dunmore, made the proclamation that any slave that abandoned his rebellious owner and aided the British Army would gain freedom at the end of the war. Some of Randolph's slaves did so, including Mrs. Randolph's personal slave, Eve. When the war ended, these runaway slaves were returned to their owners, and Eve was treated very harshly by Mrs. Randolph. She was then sold upon the death of Mrs. Randolph, forever separating her from her son. And from that day on, the house suffered from bad fortune. A pair of men shot each other in a quarrel. Two young children died from falling years apart, and a Civil War veteran died mysteriously within the house. In fact, the earliest report of ghostly happenings is from a written account of the Marquis de Lafayette himself. In 1824, he went on a grand tour throughout the states to speak with veterans of the war. While in Williamsburg, he stayed at the Peyton Randolph House. On October 1824, Lafayette wrote about his experience in the home. I consider myself fortunate to lodge in the home of a great man, Peyton Randolph. Upon my arrival, as I entered through the foyer, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It nudged me as if intending to keep me from entering. I quickly turned, but found no one there. The nights were not restful, as the sounds of voices kept me awake for most of my stay. Far more recently, in the 1960s, the house served as an overflow to dorm students of William and Mary. A young man was reported to feel a light tugging on his arm as he slept, at first believing himself to be dreaming. That hopeful belief was dashed as the bed began to shake violently, and he started up out of the bed to find the room empty. The student fled from the house, refusing to return for his belongings. Our next story is that of a local security guard dutifully performing his rounds when he found himself in the Peyton Randolph's house's basement. The whole of the house filled with a loud, otherworldly roar. He tried to flee, but found some invisible presence gripping him by the ankles and anchoring him to the ground. The guard desperately radioed for help, and 10 minutes later, it arrived. They found the door wedged closed, and they had to force it open, an action that immediately released the original guard from its trap. This story is used as a warning during training for what guards can expect when dealing with the Randolph house. Now, the next recent haunting is what happened in the eastern side of the house to your right. A woman used to live in this section of the house, and when she lived here, she would call security, reporting hearing of cries and noises of children in the attached Peyton Randolph house. Shortly after, she passed away in 2000, and a fire alarm went off in that section. The security guards who responded did not have a key. No one had access to the newly acquired property. So they were forced to break in through a window. And when they entered, they found this white material all over the floor and a fire extinguisher sitting in the middle of the room. The fire extinguisher material was not on the walls. It was not covering any other objects in the room, and it did not go into any other room. They did not see any footprints on top of the material to suggest that an intruder was inside. And of course, they searched the home and the surrounding grounds for an intruder. When they came to the fire extinguisher and picked it up, they found a perfect round circle of clean, untouched floor underneath. They never found the pin. But we still cannot explain how the fire extinguisher made its way to the middle of the room, expended all of its contents in a neat and clean pattern, while apparently remaining in a stationary position on the floor and without any footprints. We have the video interviews from the security guards who witnessed this event. So check it out on our website and YouTube page to hear their firsthand account. So why is the Peyton Randolph house so haunted? Well, we did some research, which you can read in full detail on our blog. In the 1930s, during brief excavation of the area, two archaeologists working for Colonel Williamsburg wrote in their report that there were two Indians buried on the eastern lot of the Randolph house, and that they should not be disturbed. One shallow dig in the property uncovered Native American pottery on the lot, although they did not dig deep enough, only about 8 inches, to discover more. In addition, the homes that occupied the area had constructed large basements, which would have destroyed many Native remains. An interview with people who lived in the home stated that they knew that the Indian artifacts and graves were under and around their property. In fact, one woman had demanded that she be allowed to keep some of the valuables, which included Indian pottery. Mother was upset and called them and said the artifacts belonged to her and she wanted them back. Well, they told her that anything they dug up, she could have. In 1941, the National Park Service dug under the eastern side of the Randolph house to build the tunnel for the National Historic Parkway, disturbing the two documented Indian graves. The tunnel runs under the eastern side of the Randolph property. Since the home was built in 1715, and given that two graves were found by the side of the home along with various pottery and other artifacts, it is likely that there are or were many other Native Americans buried under the Randolph house. This is the best explanation for the early hauntings of the home and for its strong paranormal activity that gives it the title of the most haunted house of Williamsburg. We were once leading a tour near the Randolph house, and 6 of the tour group were carrying EMF detectors. When we stopped to speak about the history of the house, each and every EMF suddenly went from fully charged to a completely dead battery. And we've had many groups suddenly lose power to their phones or had them freeze or reboot. Most frightening of all, on a dark and balmy summer night, the temperature suddenly dropped at least 20 degrees. It went from uncomfortably hot to feeling absolutely frigid in the span of a few seconds. Every last person in the group could feel the change in temperature, and it makes me uncomfortable to think of what must have been passing through. In addition, we have had several guests pass out in front of the house every year, most often requiring us to call medical services. our late night ghost hunts, we have had very consistent spirit box activity here at the Peyton House. Unfortunately, the voices we hear through the box are only insistent on one thing. They will always ask us to leave, sometimes politely, sometimes using a variety of colorful phrases. One of the other tour guides has been straight out sworn at by the spirit box. Thank you.